Picture this, you're out for a ride on your electric scooter and you're having a great time. And then you blow by a police car riding maybe a little bit faster than you think you should be riding. And suddenly you realize you don't know if you're riding legally or not. How fast can you ride an electric scooter in your state? Is it okay to be riding a 50-mile-per-hour scooter as long as I'm not going 50 miles per hour? We're gonna cover it all, including the weirdest electric scooter laws in the United States and the 2 places in the US that they can confiscate a scooter of any speed just for riding it on the street. Electric scooter laws are changing faster than ever in 2026. Every state has their own. It would be super boring for me to sit here and list all of the rules for all of the states. So what we're gonna do is group them into the fastest states, the slowest states, and the states that have the most strict enforcement. I also made a search tool that gives you the laws for all 50 states plus the 100 largest US cities, and it'll tell you how strictly they enforce those rules in each of those states. Let's rapid fire through the 10 most common questions about electric scooter laws because a lot has changed in 2026, and we'll start with speed limits. There are basically 3 tiers for speed limits. Pennsylvania gets its own column because scooters are banned, so they don't have a speed limit. And then we move into the 15 states that have a 15-mile-per-hour speed limit, and that includes California. 23 states at 20 miles per hour, and Michigan stands alone with a speed limit of 25 miles per hour. The 5th column isn't really what it looks like. If you're in the right-hand column with no speed limit, doesn't mean you can go out and ride like you're on the Autobahn. What it means is those states haven't decided on a speed limit yet, and it's been left up to your city and county, so check your city and county rules before you head out for a speed run. For example, Boise, Idaho is in a no-limit state, but it has some of the strictest rules, limiting you to 300 watts and 15 miles per hour. And the rules in Boise are also weirdly specific, because between 6 p.m. and 3 a.m., you're limited to 10 miles per hour, but I'm not sure if that's just for certain parts of town. Helmet laws are up next, but before we get into that, let's talk about enforcement, because while I'm not going to tell anybody to ever ignore the law, what people usually care about is what actually happens in the real world. Here's my firsthand example. I live in California in the Bay Area, and I routinely ride past police cars going 30 miles per hour or more, and I'm not recommending you do that, but as long as I'm not weaving through traffic or just being a complete jerk, they don't give me a second look. And it really varies from place to place. For example, what I hear about most of the state of New York is that it's as laid back as California. On the other hand, New York City, if you blow by a cop going 30 miles per hour, you'll probably get your scooter impounded. This table shows the states that are kind of laid back and the ones that are most likely to take you down. Let me know in the comments if you think this is accurate, because from time to time I'll be updating the database that drives the VMAX e-scooter laws search tool. This next one I think is really interesting because it's not how fast you can ride in each state, but it's how fast your scooter can be and still be legal. For example, in California, I can own a 50-mile-per-hour scooter and be caught riding it on the street as long as I'm riding it legally at the time. It's no problem. And you might ask yourself, why do we have 50-mile-per-hour scooters in a 15-mile-per-hour state? This is the same reason you'd have a 130-mile-per-hour car in a state with speed limits of 70 miles per hour. Now, if you want to be technically compliant in places that do limit how fast your scooter can go, most modern scooters, VMAX scooters included, have a place on the dash or in the app where you can set the maximum speed of the scooter. And that way, if anybody grabbed and inspected your scooter, they'd see that that's as fast as it can go, is the limit that you just set. And then if you're riding a VMAX scooter and you enter an unregulated area, you can just toggle it into beast mode by clicking on the power button 5 times, and that pauses the speed limiter. Next up are helmet laws. And first, let me just start out by saying that everybody should wear a helmet on every ride. It's your best defense against a life-changing injury. That said, for the vast majority of states in the US, if you're 18 years old or older, it's not actually illegal to ride without a helmet. In fact, there are only 2 states that require it, Oregon and Massachusetts. And Massachusetts' case is because the law was made for GoPeds and it was just never updated. What about a driver's license? Do I need one to ride an electric scooter? Well, in the vast majority of states in the US, the answer is no. In fact, up until recently, and if you read most articles, they'll tell you there are only 2 states in the US that require them. But in 2026, the answer is now 5. And it gets really confusing even within one state. For example, in California, you need a driver's license to ride an e-scooter, but you don't need one to ride an e-bike. So if you have a suspended driver's license in California, your safer choice is to pick the e-bike. So in most states, you don't need a driver's license to ride an electric scooter. But what about age limits? How old do you need to be? Well, 14 states haven't really made up their mind yet. 12 states have limits in the 12 to 15-year-old range. 19 states, you have to be 16 and above. There are actually 4 states in the US that are adults only. only. You gotta be 18 and up to ride there. Age requirements are probably one of the most enforced rules out there. And the reason is it's easy to see. They can't see by looking at you if you have a license or not, but they can tell if you're riding a scooter and you can barely see over the handlebars. And again, if you're in one of those 14 states that doesn't have a set age limit, it doesn't mean there aren't any rules. It means your city and your county probably have their own rules. So make sure you know your local rules before you run out and buy your 11-year-old a Hygge Daytona. What about registration? Do I need to register my electric scooter? Well, almost everywhere the answer to that is no, but there are two exceptions in the United States technically. One of them is Hawaii, and the other one's North Carolina. In Hawaii, you're supposed to buy a $30 one-time sticker, stick it on your scooter, and you're good. This only applies to scooters that go less than 15 miles per hour. What I hear is this hasn't really caught on and is not widely participated in, but if you live in Hawaii, let me know how it's going down in the comments. And then North Carolina is a massive outlier because they've never really written any rules for electric scooters, and so they still fall into the category of electric mopeds. So technically, they're all supposed to have registration and plates and insurance, but this is also not a rule that I think ever gets enforced. A very well-known beast scooter rider, John Richardson in North Carolina, regularly posts videos of himself out riding his Dualtron X Limited or his eMove Roadster on public roads without issue. But here's some of the crazy stuff coming our way in 2026 that will be enforced. Priscilla's Law in New York is not passed yet, but if it does, it would require license and registration for all e-scooters. And in that case, there's no pretending that you're among the slower and exempt scooters, because none of the scooters are going to be exempt. To be clear, Priscilla's Law hasn't passed yet. One that has passed is the new law in New Jersey that's driving e-bike riders crazy. That requires driver's licenses, insurance, and I believe registration as well for Class 2 and Class 3 e-bikes. Now, New Jersey's law also affects e-scooters, but it does have a carve-out for low-speed e-scooters, and so those don't require registration and insurance, and I imagine what the bigger scooters are doing there is just pretending that they're in the lower group. It's still really early for the New Jersey law, so it remains to be seen how that will be enforced. But the newest and most extreme scooter law, I think, in the whole country is in Nassau County, and that's part of Long Island in New York. And it basically bans all Class 2 and Class 3 e-bikes and all e-scooters, and they can just confiscate your scooter or e-bike just for riding them. Now, this is causing a huge backlash. I don't expect this law to stay on the books, but right now, apparently they can just take your scooter for riding anywhere in the county, including on public roads. But let's go back now to the 50 states and look at what surface you're supposed to be riding on. Bike lanes, streets, sidewalks? Yes, sidewalks are sometimes legal. Here's the 50 state breakdown, and I'm gonna start by just looking at bike lanes. Generally speaking, all the states mostly want you to be in the bike lane. 12 states make riding in the bike lane mandatory, in fact. 24 make it your primary place to be, but allow you to get into the street if you need to. 3 completely ban high-speed scooters in the bike lane, and 11 have left it to local jurisdictions. What about riding on the road if I want to? Well, one state, Pennsylvania, says no riding on the road at all, private property only. 15 states, including California, say you can ride on the road most of the time. And some states have a restriction that when you do ride on the road, it has to be on a road that has a speed limit of less than 25 or 30 miles per hour. And this one is a weird one that a lot of people don't know about. I'll use California as an example here. So even if you have a 15 mile per hour scooter, riding on a 30 mile per hour road on a 15 mile per hour scooter in California is illegal, unless you have a designated bike lane. So even a country road like this one, you can't do it because this little strip on the side of the road here isn't an official bike lane. Now it gets weirder because regular bikes and e-bikes can use that little strip, even though it's not a bike lane, but e-scooters are illegal anywhere on this road. It gets crazier in New York City, where e-scooters are banned entirely from roads with speed limits higher than 30 miles per hour. Even if there's a bike lane on these roads in New York City, you can't use them. For example, if you live in Queens and rely on a major road like Cross Bay Boulevard to get to work, you can't ride an e-scooter here. It's legal on a bike or an e-bike, but on e-scooters, it's a no-go. Any street in New York City with a higher speed limit than 30 miles per hour is illegal to ride on an e-scooter, no matter how much space or how much bike lane there is. Let's talk about sidewalk riding. This one's a little bit controversial, and I recommend against riding on sidewalks at all times, even when it's legal. And the reason is this is the place that upsets non-scooter riders the most. And I get it. A lot of people want to ride electric scooters on the sidewalks because they feel like it's a lot safer than riding in traffic. But what makes it the most dangerous is that when people are walking, they can move kind of unpredictably from side to side. They can just suddenly turn in front of you or pop out of a door. And on a scooter, if you hit a pedestrian, it's always going to be you that's at fault. So why is it so important to know all the scooter laws where you live? You know coupon stacking, where you get 2 different coupons and you stack them to get the higher discount? Well, you don't want to do that with breaking electric scooter laws. So for example, if you're going to be speeding, don't also be riding on the sidewalk and not wearing a helmet at the same time. The odds of you getting pulled over goes up exponentially as you stack infractions. You want to avoid this, you got to know the rules where you live. If a designated bike lane exists, you should use it. But, don't crowd the bikes and don't blow by them really close at high speed. When there's no bike lane, riding on the street is usually legal, but use common sense. Keep right, flow with traffic when practical, and use turn signals if you've got them. Let's look at some wild quirks in electric scooter laws, because some local laws call for some weird things. In Atlanta, Georgia, they implemented a curfew from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. for electric scooters to keep people from riding home drunk from the bar. Now, the good news is that only applies to rental scooters, so if you've got a privately owned scooter, you don't have to worry about that one. Next is Portland, Oregon, and the Transportation Bureau there is notoriously strict about pedestrian safety, and so they don't allow left turns at lights. So if you're on an electric scooter, unlike a bicycle where you can just kind of merge to the left and make a left turn with traffic, you're supposed to stop, get off your scooter, cross like a pedestrian, remount, and then continue on your way. You also need to watch out for college campuses. You might know the rules for the city that you live in, but once you cross that invisible line onto college campus, you're at the mercy of the college campus police and whatever set of rules they happen to have. So if you look around and you don't see any scooters at the bike racks or see anybody else riding around, you might be in a no-fly zone. So how do you protect yourself from all of these different scooter laws? Well, the first one I already mentioned, which is locking the speed of your scooter into whatever speed mode you need to be for wherever you're riding. And that way, if you get checked out, you're good to go. The other one is you can print out the laws for your local jurisdiction, and this is especially helpful if you happen to be riding a completely legal scooter. And that way, if you get pulled over, you can show the officer the local ordinances. No fault of the police, there are a lot of rules to know, and most people don't know the local rules for electric scooters. Just remember, police really care about safety. In fact, in all my years in the industry talking to companies, riders, and local officials, it all boils down to two things: use common sense and don't ride like a jerk. Thankfully, police mainly look at behavior and not hardware. Unless you're in sort of a crackdown zone like New York City, they're not going to check to see if your scooter makes 750 watts or 1,000 watts. But if you're blowing past pedestrians on a sidewalk or running red lights, you're going to get stopped. So how do you find your local scooter laws? Well, I made a scooter law search tool that lets you find the rules in your state and in 100 of the biggest cities in the United States. I'll link it down in the comments section along with a coupon code for VMAX electric scooters. And it shows all of the important laws in your state as well as the likelihood of those laws being enforced. Have a look at that, but there could also be errors there, so let me know if you think I've got anything wrong, and definitely check your state and local government websites for the final word on any scooter laws. I'm Paul Somerville from VMAX, and remember, no matter what the law says, you're safer wearing a helmet on every ride. And please, ride friendly or we're all gonna get banned. I'll see you in the next one.